Hey everyone, welcome back to Extra Rise English Podcast, the show that helps you level up your English one real conversation at a time. I am Mia.
And I am Leo. So glad you are here.
Okay, so I want to start today with a very specific scenario. Tell me if this has happened to you. You are in a situation where you need to speak English. Could be a meeting, could be a presentation, could be just talking to someone new at a networking event. And your English, when you're alone, when you're relaxed, when you're texting or writing, is actually pretty good. But the moment you open your mouth in that situation, something goes wrong.
The words stop coming.
The words stop coming. Your mind goes blank. You can feel your face getting warm. Your heart is beating a little faster. And the more you notice all of that happening, the worse it gets. And the words that were perfectly fine 2 minutes ago are suddenly just gone.
That is the freeze, and it is one of the most frustrating experiences for English learners at every level, including people with very strong English, because it has almost nothing to do with how much English you know.
Which is the part nobody tells you. You could have studied English for 10 years. You could score well on a test. You could understand everything and still freeze the moment you have to speak under pressure. And when that happens, most people come to the same conclusion. They think, my English just isn't good enough yet. I need to study more. So they go back to studying and then they freeze again next time. Because studying more does not fix a freeze.
This episode does. Today, we're going to explain exactly why the freeze happens, the real reason, not the one you've been telling yourself. And then we're going to give you a 3-part fix that you can use the next time you feel it starting.
3 parts, all practical. None of them involve studying more. Let's get into it. This is segment 1, what is actually happening when you freeze. Leo, I want you to go deep on this because I think most people explain the freeze as I got nervous and then stop there. But that's not really an explanation. That's just describing the feeling, again, with a different word.
Right, and until you understand the mechanism, what's actually happening in your brain during a freeze, you can't really fix it. So here's what's going on. When you feel social pressure, when you know people are watching, when the stakes feel high, when you're being evaluated, your nervous system treats it the same way it would treat a physical threat. Your body starts preparing to deal with danger.
Like fight or flight.
Exactly like fight or flight, and what fight or flight does is redirect your brain's resources. Blood and energy move away from the parts of your brain responsible for complex thinking, for accessing memory, for constructing sentences, for searching for the right word, and toward the parts responsible for immediate survival. Your heart rate goes up, your muscles tighten, you become hyper-aware of your surroundings. All of that is your body trying to protect you, but none of it is useful when what you actually need to do is find a word.
So your brain is literally operating with fewer resources than it normally has, at the exact moment you need it most.
That's exactly it. And here's the part that makes it worse specifically for people speaking in a second language. In your native language, you have so many words stored, so many patterns, so many automatic phrases that even with reduced brain resources, you can still function. There's enough runway. But in a second language, especially when you're still building, that runway is shorter. So when the freeze reduces your capacity, you hit the edge of the runway faster.
So it's not that your English disappeared, it's that your brain temporarily can't access it.
Precisely. The words are there. The knowledge is there. The freeze is not a knowledge problem. It's an access problem. And that distinction matters enormously because it completely changes what the solution is.
Right. If it's a knowledge problem, you study more. If it's an access problem,
you train access. You practice the conditions under which you need to speak, not just the content. You build habits that keep your nervous system calm enough for your language brain to stay online.
And that's a completely different kind of practice than most people are doing.
Completely different. And there's one more layer to this that I want to name because it's very specific to a lot of our listeners. A lot of people who grew up in Asian school systems were taught that making a mistake in English is something to be ashamed of. Teachers corrected you in front of the class. Grades depended on getting it right. You learned early that wrong English is bad, and bad is something to hide. So now when you're in a situation where you might make a mistake, your nervous system flags it as a threat. The social cost of being wrong feels very high, and that by itself is enough to trigger the freeze.
Yes, and this is so specific and so real because it's not just anxiety, it's anxiety with a story attached. The story says, if you mess up, people will judge you. If people judge you, that's a disaster, and your brain believes that story completely.
And the fix is not to tell yourself the story's wrong. The fix is to practice enough times in low-stakes situations that your brain starts collecting evidence that the story is not true, that mistakes happen and nothing collapses, that you stumble on a word and the conversation continues, that people are far less focused on your errors than you think they are. Evidence, real experience, that's what rewires it.
Evidence over intention. I love that. Okay, let's get into the actual fix. This is segment 2, the 3-part fix.
Part 1. Slow down before you speak, not while you speak. One of the most counterintuitive things about the freeze is that most people try to fix it by rushing. They panic, so they try to push words out as fast as possible before the freeze gets worse. And that usually makes it worse. What actually works is creating a small gap before you start speaking, not during.
What does that look like in practice?
It looks like buying yourself 1 or 2 seconds of legitimate pause before you begin. And the way you do that is with a bridge phrase, a short, natural English expression that signals you're about to respond, gives your brain a moment to come online, and sounds completely normal to the other person. Phrases like, "That's a good question," or "Let me think about that for a second," or "Okay, so," or just "Right, so." These are not delay tactics, they're real normal things that native speakers say all the time. But for you, they serve a second purpose. They're the bridge before the sentence, the moment your nervous system gets to settle slightly before the real words have to come.
So you're not stalling, you're just using the same transition words that everyone else uses, but now you know why they matter and how to use them deliberately.
Exactly. And even 1 second of that bridge is often enough to let a word come back that was just out of reach. The freeze is not total, it's a narrowing, and 1 second of calm can be enough to widen it again.
Okay, part 2.
Part 2. Say something incomplete rather than nothing. This is the most important mindset shift in the entire episode. When people freeze, their instinct is to stay silent until they can say something perfect or complete. But silence is what makes the freeze worse, because now you're under even more pressure, and the other person is waiting, and every second feels longer. The fix is to say something, even something incomplete, even something imperfect. Start the sentence. Trust that the rest will come.
But what if the rest doesn't come?
Then you use a filler phrase, something like, "What I'm trying to say is," or "I want to say something like," or "It's something like this." These phrases do 2 things. They keep the conversation moving so the silence doesn't compound the pressure, and they give your brain a different entry point into the thought. Sometimes when you can't access a word directly, you can get there by describing around it.
Right, it's like when you can't remember someone's name, but if you start saying, "She's the one who always," something unlocks. The act of speaking opens a different door.
Exactly. And people are far more patient with "I'm trying to say" than with complete silence. Silence creates awkwardness. Effort creates connection, even imperfect effort, especially imperfect effort.
And part 3?
Part 3. Practice the freeze on purpose. This is the one that makes the biggest long-term difference. The freeze is triggered by pressure, by the feeling that stakes are high. The only way to lower the stakes is to repeat the experience enough times in low-stakes environments that your brain stops reading it as dangerous. That means speaking English out loud, regularly, in situations where it's okay to stumble, recording yourself and listening back, having conversations that don't matter, with a stranger, with an app, with a mirror, with a classmate outside of class, building what I would call a freeze tolerance. Your nervous system learning, this is not a threat. I've been here before. I can do this.
Right. The first time you did anything scary, it was terrifying. The 10th time, it was uncomfortable. The 100th time, it was just Tuesday.
Exactly. And the key is that the practice has to be out loud. Reading English doesn't build freeze tolerance. Listening doesn't build it either. Only speaking builds it, because freeze is a speaking problem. It only gets solved in speaking.
Only speaking builds it. Write that down. Actually, don't just write it down. Subscribe so you keep hearing it. This is the kind of thing you need to hear more than once, on more than one bad day, when you're in the middle of a freeze and you forget everything. Subscribe right now, not for us, so that the next time you freeze, you've already heard this, so you know what it is, so you know it's not your English failing you.
3 parts to carry with you. Slow down before you speak with a bridge phrase. Say something incomplete rather than nothing. Practice to freeze on purpose. Let us say those out loud. The bridge phrase is first. That is a good question. Let me think about that for a second. Okay, so say those. And the filler phrases. What I'm trying to say is, it's something like this. Say those too. Pause and say them now.
All right, segment 3, the drill. 3 scenarios where the freeze shows up. Leo responds using the fix. You say it out loud with him. Ready, Leo?
Ready.
Scenario 1. You're in a job interview. The interviewer asks you, can you tell me about a time you handled a difficult situation at work? You have an example in mind, but the moment she finishes the question, your mind goes partially blank. The details you prepared are not coming in the right order. What do you do?
Okay, so I do have a good example for this. Let me make sure I give you the full picture. About 6 months into my last role, we had a situation where what I'm trying to say is the project we were running hit a major blocker about 2 weeks before the deadline. The client had changed one of the core requirements, and we had to decide very quickly whether to push the timeline or restructure the entire deliverable. I ended up leading that conversation with the client, which was uncomfortable, but I think it was the right call. We renegotiated the scope, delivered on time, and the client actually gave us more work after that.
Did you catch everything he did there? He started with, okay, so, a bridge phrase that bought him 1 second. He kept talking even when the details were not fully in order by using, what I'm trying to say is, to redirect mid-sentence. And then the story came. Not perfect, not polished, but real, complete, and impressive. That's the freeze fix in action.
And the interviewer doesn't see a freeze. She sees someone who takes a moment to gather their thoughts, which is actually a sign of maturity. People who answer too fast sound like they were waiting for the question. People who take 1 second sound like they're actually thinking about it.
Say that out loud. Okay, so I do have a good example for this. Let me make sure I give you the full picture. Pause and say it now. Scenario 2. You're at a team lunch. A colleague you don't know well asks you, so what do you think about working here so far? You want to say something genuine and not just boring, but your mind goes blank and you can't find the right words for what you actually feel. What do you do?
That's a good question. Honestly, it's something like this. I think I'm still in the phase where I'm learning more than I'm contributing, which is a little uncomfortable, but I think that's probably the right phase to be in right now. The team is good. What I'm trying to say is the pace is faster than I expected, but I think that's actually what I needed. I was getting a bit too comfortable in my last job.
That answer is honest and interesting and human, and he built it in real time using the tools. That's a good question gave him the 1st second. It's something like this got him into the sentence when the exact words weren't there. And what I'm trying to say is let him course correct mid-thought. 3 tools, 1 natural answer.
And that answer is going to make his colleague want to keep talking to him because it was real. Generic answers close conversations. Honest, imperfect answers open them.
Say it out loud. That's a good question. It's something like this. Pause and try it with your own honest answer about a job, a class, anything. Go. Last one, scenario 3. You're leading a small meeting and someone asks you a question you weren't prepared for about a detail you should probably know, but you don't have in front of you. You feel the freeze starting. What do you do?
Right, so that's actually a detail I want to give you the correct number on rather than guess. Let me check that and come back to you by end of day. I want to make sure what I tell you is accurate. What I can say right now is that the overall direction is confirmed. It's just a specific figure I want to verify. Does that work?
That response is so confident. He didn't freeze visibly, he didn't make something up, he didn't apologize. He used right so to start, bought himself 1 beat, acknowledged the question, gave what he could, the overall direction is confirmed, and then handled the gap professionally. I want to make sure what I tell you is accurate. That's not weakness, that's integrity.
And in a meeting, integrity is worth more than a wrong answer delivered with confidence. Nobody respects confident wrong. Everybody respects careful and accurate.
Say it out loud. Right, so that's a detail I want to give you the correct answer on. I'll come back to you on that. Pause and say it now. Go back and say all 3 scenarios out loud. The interview answer, the team lunch answer, the meeting pivot. Say them until the bridge phrases feel like your own words, because the goal is not to memorize these exact sentences. The goal is for your mouth to get used to starting, to moving, to trusting that the rest will come, because it will. All right, wrapping up. Here's your one thing from today. The freeze is not a signal that your English isn't good enough. It's a signal that your nervous system is in protection mode. And nervous systems respond to evidence, not to encouragement. So the job is not to believe harder that you can speak English. The job is to go collect the evidence, one real conversation at a time, one imperfect sentence at a time, one slow bridge phrase at a time.
And here's what the evidence shows. After enough low-stakes practice, the freeze does not disappear, but it gets shorter. And then it gets smaller. And then one day you're mid-conversation and you realize you haven't thought about freezing at all. Not because you forced it away, because you talked your way past it.
You talked your way past it. Your assignment this week, before your next real English conversation, use one bridge phrase on purpose, even if you don't need it. That's a good question. Okay, so let me think about that for a second. Pick one. Practice the motion before you need it, and then come to the comments and tell us which one you chose and where you used it. We read every single one.
We genuinely do.
And if this episode gave you language for something you've been experiencing but never had words for, share it with one person who's been silently avoiding English situations because of the freeze. Not because it helps us, because that person thinks they're the only one, and they're not. Not even close. Be the one who sends it to them.
And if you want more of this every single week, subscribe. We'll be here.
Thank you so much for being here on Extra Rise English Podcast. And remember,
because one serving of English is never enough.
See you in the next episode.